Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another series with Child Link, where we have important conversations on children for the month of April. However, we are focusing our conversations specifically on boys as we observed Blue Umbrella Day earlier this month. Now, in this series, we're going to be focusing on discipline, masculinity, and challenging harmful norms. In studio with me, I have Diego Alfonso and Onessa Brotherson, who will be joining me in this conversation. Onessa, Diego, how are you guys doing?
Thank
Doing
you for
well.
having me. I'm doing good today.
All right, great. Now, I want to start off this conversation with Onessa specifically, because the first question I have is, how do you approach discipline with boys, and what has shaped this approach? I know you're a boy mom, so what is your how do you approach discipline? What has helped you to approach that?
So I have a 6-year-old, and I tend to not focus more on corporal punishment, the hitting and stuff. I mostly would just discipline him, like time out or take away something that is his comfort, a tablet or something. But as well, I also tell him why I'm disciplining him. So he understands that, hey, you do this, and this is why this is happening to you. Because I think it gives him a better understanding that, okay, if I behave in such a way, my comfort going to be taken away instead of hitting or, punishing in that type of way. So he understands that type of discipline. So I go with that.
Now, Diego, what do you think about her approach as it relates to disciplining her son?
Yes, well, there's definitely lots of merit in that because actually it has been discovered and proven that being violent or abusive with children, physically, more so boys, does not in any way help actually. It could actually be counterproductive because it's like inculcating in them and socializing them and teaching them subliminally that the way to instill values or to get a desired result, even with good intentions, is to be violent or physical. So, and we need not underestimate the intelligence of little children. They may not demonstrate it at the moment when you're talking to them, but that's a seed in their heart and spirit. So it's definitely the way to go. Is violence or abuse is not the solution, and definitely talking with them and modeling certain behavior is most effective in the long run.
Definitely, I agree. Because I remember in our last episode, Benita was talking as well. You know that this is also one of the reasons why you find that boy children growing up, they also tend to close off because of that fear of that. Oh, what if I go tell mommy and daddy, and I get punished for it, or So I really think that having that healthy conversation and not raising them in what you would say a toxic environment where there's a lot of hitting and stuff like that is definitely
Yes.
not the way to go. But do boys feel comfortable talking to adults about their struggles? Why or why not?
Well, it could go either way. I think the key, and I think I did mention it on the last program, is that we must be create that safe space and environment. We must be approachable as parents, and when our boys, if our boys, they initially we will have that test where they will tell us something. We'll get at least one opportunity where they will tell us something, and depending on our reaction at that time and our response, they will decide from there on if they would ever want to tell us anything. So we want to always keep that door open, no matter how horrifying something that we may be told by our boys, or it could apply to girls as well. They must feel safe. Yes, there may be certain consequences, repercussions. They will understand that choices have consequences and so forth. But we don't want to create an environment of fear and we're unapproachable. And they have the fear that we will insult them, lash out to them physically, and have that fear because that could make them even more vulnerable. For example, if the child is being abused in any form, they would not feel, they would continue to secretly endure that abuse rather than to tell us, and we maybe victim blame. or we don't believe them. So we must have that, we must be open minded and approachable, and regardless of what is said, the way we respond to those, the first or the initial things that they may confide in us, because they will, as young children at first, they will initially, they talk a lot and gabber a lot, but especially the boy after a certain time, if certain experiences, if he noticed that every time he does open up, there seems to be a violent or abusive backlash, or he's blamed for whatever it is totally, then he could learn from early to shut down and just deal with it himself, which could be dangerous from a variety of standpoints.
Vanessa, you have a very young son. Has there ever been an instance where he would have approached you with a struggle he's facing? I mean, little children, may find things, hard as well. And how did you approach that situation? How did you create that safe space for him?
So, since growing up, I have a lot of boy cousins, and the males always tend to tell them, "Oh, don't cry, you're a boy. Don't do this, you're a boy." Or would throw insults that, "Oh, you're behaving like a girl." So they were always taught to not express emotions, and I said that wasn't going to be something that I'm going to instill in my child. So since he learned to interact and to come to me and approach me with certain things, I've always made that door open for him to be expressive. So as little as he is, as 6 years old, if something is hurting him, or I did something or shouted at him that he didn't like, he would approach me in a way, "Mom, I didn't like that you shout at me." And then we will have, you see, the thing is, what I think some parents do is they see them as these little babies, so the interaction don't be like grown interaction that you will be. So if he come to me and say, "Hey, mommy, you made me feel this way, I didn't like how you talked to me," I would say, "I'm sorry, but mommy was this or that." So I opened this door to let him know that it's okay to be emotional, and it's okay to express yourself. It doesn't make you less than a man or a boy. You still have that door open to be expressive. So he comes and he talks, and I appreciate it, because with how the world going on now, I'm glad that my son is able to come to me and tell me certain things.
What are some of the mistakes, rather, that you think we make when it comes to toughening up boys or trying to get boys to be boys? What are some of the mistakes that you guys think we make as parents, as society, when it comes to us toughening up boys?
Yeah, I think Onessa referred to it, give some examples. Indeed, it is not wise for us to encourage our boys not to express how they feel, express their emotions, cry if they're hurt, if they need to. When we do that, we are actually socializing them, orienting them, parenting them, to believe that it makes them less of a male to express themselves. And lots of the issues and challenges we're having with men in society today could very well be traced back to how they were socialized. And so, if from small, if Onessa's son from age 6 is being told, for example, that it's not okay to cry, it's not okay to talk about how you feel, by the time he reaches his late teens, 17, 18, 19, 20, 25, he would have normalized internalizing hurts and pains, and that those things could lead to a lot of the issues that we're facing today. For example, men are known in Guyana, the Caribbean, and around the world. Statistics are showing that men are committing suicide the most. Statistics are showing that men are the main perpetrators of physical violence against women and same children. Could it be there's a link between that, those violent outbursts and explosions? Could there be a link between that and all the man has been bottling up since he was a boy? Maybe he was abused, tantalized, bullied, taken advantage of, never had a voice, never allowed to express himself, never allowed to cry sometimes, which can be therapeutic. And so, with all these bottling up that's going on, could it be that there's a significant connection between us men bottling up things for years, decades, and then one day there's what is called the straw that broke the camel's back, or that breaking point, and they could trip because they've not been socialized, and um, it is not known to them, or because it all comes back to gender and gender roles and gender stereotypes, and so they begin to live up to society's expectations and roles assigned to them, which are not necessarily healthy, because that same society, if a young man internalizes something for years and then finally does something really catastrophic, violent, brutal, animalistic, the same society that told him not to talk to anyone, not to express himself, not to cry, that same society will turn around and call him a beast, an animal, doesn't fit to be in society, lock him away and throw away the key, hang him high, and those kind of things. So the man has to know for himself that it's okay. It doesn't make me less of a man or a boy to talk to someone, express myself, cry if I need to, talk to a counselor. That doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you're showing maturity and responsibility as a young man or a man.
I think these stereotypes that society has created surrounding boys, boys don't cry, you're not allowed to express emotion, you need to toughen up, you need to be a man. I think these stereotypes has ruined safe spaces and how boys can express themselves, but also how do you think we can challenge these stereotypes as parents? How do you think we get to challenge these stereotypes that society has placed men in in a mold, kind of, where you're not allowed to do this, you have to do this. Also cultural expectations as well. Even in religion, you find they place a lot of stereotypes when it comes to boys who eventually grow into men. How do we challenge these stereotypes and these cultural expectations?
For me, I would say it is consistently and intentionally keeping these conversations going, talking about it, modeling it, us as men and fathers and father figures and role models, intentionally having the conversations, talking about it, awareness, sensitization, and as I said, modeling is a big one as well. And it has to be a collective effort with as much of society as possible. The faith-based organizations, civil society, NGOs, and so on, and us as parents in general, as much of us as possible, need to consistently and intentionally be letting it known and keeping the conversation going that it's okay to express ourselves. Boys can express themselves, men can express themselves, be emotional if they need to, and it doesn't make them any less of a male. Yeah.
How do you challenge these stereotypes, Anessa, knowing that you have a growing boy, getting into the world where the stereotypes are going to hit? How do you challenge that in your home when raising your child?
I think it starts with me because if I don't make that safe space for him, when he goes out, he's gonna be closed off. He's gonna think that it's not okay for me to express myself. And I think the schools as well needs to give these boys a safe space to be expressive. Not just focus on, because we always focus on the girls and how they feel and how what they're going through, and we're not focused much on what boys. We don't ask boys, hey, you okay today? How you day do? How you going? How you feeling? How is it? We always focus so much effort on trying to figure out how a girl is feeling, how a woman is feeling, and we don't do the same for men. And that is a question you have to ask why. But then again, it goes back to being brought up in that way, because some women are brought up to think that, oh, if a man is too expressive, or if he too, as some people have said, too cheesy, he's not a man enough for you. So some women might insult them too and be like, oh, why you telling me this, or why you being so expressive? And they close off.
I definitely think conversations in school, starting at an early age, is something that they need to start incorporating in school as well, because enough conversations is not being have in schools. And going back to what Onessa said as well, the way we're being raised, thinking that boys don't go through certain things, and taking it back to the Blue Umbrella Day, a lot of people are not aware of the fact, or not even aware, but do not want to accept the fact that not only girls experience sexual abuse and violence, and boys as well also go through that. So it's always the focus on girls. Girls alone go through sexual abuse and violence, but the truth of the matter is that boys also experience these things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very true, very true. And that's why we must create that safe space and be careful not to cause them to feel ashamed or embarrassed, embarrassed, victim blame, so they can feel safe knowing that the person that really needs to be ashamed is the perpetrator. And so they can know that whatever they say, their parents or guardians are approachable, and let them know it's okay to seek help and talk about what you're going through.
And also, people need to be more aware and conscious of the fact that this is not a funny conversation. You know, when you go to people and you have these conversations, you bring up these conversations, it's a, oh, he went through that, how he went through that, and it it leads to a lot of jokes. And I'll tell you this, there is a difference between joking and checking in on somebody, but how do you know the shift when, let's say, a peer or your child friends or somebody joking and checking in with them? How do you know the difference, and how do you create that shift when it comes to joking with them and checking, like really checking in on them mentally, emotionally? How do you know the shift between the two?
Yes, and so the first thing, the person that is checking in, there has to be an attitude or aura of sincerity, which can actually be felt. You can, for the most part, you could instinctively you could know if someone is sincere, but the thing about it is that when we're checking in, we must. You see, there's a saying that people may not care how much we know until they know how much we care. And so there must be that genuine care and concern. And when checking in, we should have options and alternatives and help and ideas about how we can help this person to come out from what they're experiencing or going through. And the person must feel safe, confidential, and respected through it all, and saying things like, I'm here for you, and be willing to, even if what is being shared is not something we have the authority or what it takes to deal with, we can refer to for professional help. And we must not ever breach that trust in terms of the confidentiality and giving that listening ear, so that trust can be cherished and appreciated, and so the person would not be hesitant next time to share. But there must be that sincerity and a willingness to not just listen only, but where necessary, refer or give options as to how they can overcome or get help concerning what they're sharing.
Definitely. How do you think peers, friends in schools, your son goes to school, how do you think his friends and the people he's surrounding himself with in school when you're not there, how do you think they shape his attitude and his behavior?
Well, for now he's pretty young, so I think that they haven't gotten to that structure whereby they could influence them in, I don't want to say such a bad way, but they're
Babies,
babies
basically.
is still. But what I want to add is that I started to instill in him to protect himself, protect his body. We always focus on women and telling them that, oh, somebody shouldn't touch you here and somebody shouldn't touch you there and stuff like that. So when anytime he goes out or if I always let him know, now listen, you need to protect yourself. Nobody shouldn't touch you somewhere that, is not inappropriate and stuff. So I start from young. So now I've been seeing him that he has a way whereby he don't want to go out if he's not dressed properly. He don't want to walk around in just his shorts because he find that his body needs to be protected as though because a lot of boys don't grow like that. They think that, oh, as a boy, I could walk how I want to walk. I could. So start from young, teaching them that you don't need to dress this way in front of your friends. Doesn't matter if you all grow up together or whatever. As a man, as a little boy, you put on proper clothing. When you're going out, when somebody's over, when you're around your friends, make sure that you have boundaries. Start them from small so they know that, hey, this is my space, this is your space, and this is not what's supposed to be happening. So they know to let you know, hey, this is what happened to me and stuff. So I think you should start that from a very young age.
That is a very, very interesting point you raised there. Teaching him how to have boundaries, because how exactly do you teach young boys how to have boundaries, respect, and consent as well?
You want to answer this one?
Yeah, how do you teach young boys to have boundaries, respect, and consent? I mean, and like she rightfully said, you must start. It has to start young.
Yes.
Let me tell you, as an adult, I struggle with boundaries. So how do we instill that in young boys? When it comes to boundaries and respect.
Yes, well, again, it comes back to what we mentioned earlier. There has to be intentionality, there has to be conversations, openness, approachability, being approachable, and in terms of there must be consequences where there's a breach of boundaries or instructions and so on concerning the safety of the child. But these are things that it has to be ongoing, continual, intentional, and there's a saying that correction plus relationship is equal to change. Correction minus relationship is equal to rebellion. So we have to develop that kind of a relationship with our boys, with our children, that rapport, that over a period of time we earn their trust. So anything we're trying to instill in them, to teach them, we're necessary, we're applicable, we're modeling it, and at the same time, we don't want to drive fear into them, but it must be that kind of a space where the conversation is ongoing, so to speak, consistently along the way. Look for teachable moments along the way, so it can become kind of lifestyle normalized. But as I said, it has to be consistent. If it's too far apart and there's not constant capitalizing on teachable moments, and so it could kind of weaken the emphasis. So intentionality and consistency and modeling the behavior where necessary, these are some of the things that we would have to be conscious of, and also intentionally causing them to be exposed to what is positive illustrations, examples of the what is it you're trying to inculcate in them, so they will understand and appreciate that this is what is right, and they can go with the flow and capitalize on those teachable moments, and it becomes a part of them, it becomes a part of their psyche and their thinking.
So we touched on a few things, including discipline, creating safe spaces for boys. But how should one respond, or how do you think one should respond when a boy is being aggressive or harmful, is displaying aggressive and harmful behavior?
Well, definitely not to address it in the same way, at the same energy in terms of the aggressiveness and violence or physically, because that could be counterproductive. That is actually enforcing what they're doing in a subliminal way. So we've definitely got to confront it, not let it slide, but we don't match it with the same thing. We are trying to, the same behavioral change we're trying to inculcate. We got to be careful we're not guilty of doing the same thing, because it can be counterproductive and send the wrong message. Subliminally, it's saying, you are trying to stop me from doing something that is supposed to be wrong,
And you're
behavioral
doing
change. And the very thing you're trying to prevent me from doing, you're doing it to me as a solution to what I am doing. So that may work temporarily, but at some point that child will become of age and the cycle will just continue. As a matter of fact, they will now in turn continue the cycle when they get children, because that's how they were socialized. So children learn even more from us, from what we're saying verbally, but what we're actually modeling or doing. They learn that more. So sometimes it can be counterproductive. So we don't do it at the same level. It's like they say, you two wrongs don't make a right. So again, it comes back to keeping the conversation going, be consistent in what we're saying, and there can be certain consequences, of course, that is non-violent, non-abusive, but there are consequences, other consequences in terms of, forms of discipline, in terms of things that they may be really dear to them and they cherish, and you let them know that, you're grounded, or this is not going to happen for the next few weeks or whatever. And so they understand that violence is not a solution, or abuse.
That was kind of like what Unessa was speaking about earlier. But what do you think? I kind of feel like I'm aware, but like for our viewers who are looking right now, what is the difference between discipline and punishment when it comes to handling young boys?
I would say punishment sometimes could be harmful, right? Punishment is harmful. Discipline is a way of behavioral change being instilled in the child without harming the child. And when we say harm, it's not always physical, because you could be harming a child emotionally, mentally, psychologically. Because while we're very much aware that abuse is not only physical, so you could actually damage a child's self-esteem and their identity and break their confidence, and we end up with a whole lot of other maybe mental health issues like anxiety and fear and so forth. So punishment is more to the detriment of the child, while discipline seeks to instill behavioral change in a non-violent way.
But how can we use discipline to teach young boys accountability without still instilling that fear within them?
Yes. Well, the thing about it is that we must be conscious that when we are confronting a behavior, that we are not using threats of violence, threats of abuse, that would drive fear. Because the thing about it, scare tactics or using fear for behavioral change may only work for a period of time. There will come a time when that child steps over into adulthood and they make their own choices. So there's nothing else to in their minds. They don't have to fear this thing anymore. But you want to, for want of a better term, use the long game, whereby your intention is that this is what you're trying to instill. They must get it in such a way that even after they reach maybe the age of 18, they now voluntarily manifest that behavioral change, even though they don't have to. There's no longer any necessarily any consequences from a mommy or daddy. It is so instilled in such a good way without fear, because after they become an adult, they can say now, I'm an adult, you can't touch me, you can't beat me, so I can do this. So, but that's what fear can do until they reach an area in their lives or an age where they're now maybe an adult. They don't have to fear anymore because they're an adult. You can't touch them, and so they continue the behavior that they had only stopped because of fear of physical consequences. But because you used a different strategy, now they reach 18, they voluntarily continue to live out this behavioral change because it has now been instilled in them, and they understand that, listen, this is in my best interest, and so I can now continue to voluntarily do this. So we didn't use the fear tactic. We appealed to their um, intelligence, knowledge. We didn't underestimate their ability to understand and comprehend over a period of time. And so now it begins to bear fruit, where they're now doing it voluntarily because we did a good job in showing them, talking with them, showing them choices have consequences. If you do this, this is the consequence, and so on. So that could be one way of approaching it and instilling behavioral change.
I definitely agree. Now, on to Onessa. Has there ever been a time, any point, whereby you realize that your son would have done something wrong or he did something and he's probably trying to hide it? Like, have you ever realized your son hiding something from you that he did wrong or something that, may not have sit right with you? Has there ever been a point that that had happened, and how did you handle that?
Me 6-year-olds is do so much and hide it. There've been many times when he did stuff and he's be like, sorry mommy, sorry mommy, because he know it's gonna. But then, as the thing is, when I look at him and he's be like, sorry mommy, the expression that I want to give, I'm be like, if I shout and behave and react in this way, I can just crush this little. He know he did wrong. The fact that he come and he trying to apologize and say sorry, mommy. So I try not to. I really do have to like probably walk away and count to 10, then go back, and I will ask him to excuse out of the room. And then thing, but you really listen. You really sometimes have to just hold your tongue, as old people say. Hold your tongue, because I think the verbal expression or the verbal abuse is way worse than if you take a belt and beat them. To me, especially when it mightn't be that they willfully want to do something bad, but they're just curious and want to explore, but they know it bad. They know that they should not be doing it. So you just gotta express yourself in a different way. I mean, I can't say that I have never been explosive, but after that, I always go back to him, and I always tell people, if anytime I'm ever explosive and I act in a way that like make him cry or something, I always go back to him and I'd be like, you know why I was upset and why I said what I said. You did this caused my reaction, but I am sorry for the way I spoke to you, but don't do it again, because the next time you do it again, this is what will happen. So now he gets that understanding that, okay, I did this, it's upset mommy, I'm not going to do it again, because if I do it again, this is what gonna happen to me, or this, she gonna take away something or so. So I think that is better than you beating them or pulling them, or sometimes I even do timeout. I'd be like, hey, go on timeout, and you're on timeout because this is why you did what you did. And then you don't usually do it back again, because you know the consequences.
Now, Onessa said something, Diego, that I want your thoughts on, which I agree. But she said verbal abuse is way better than physical abuse or something
Way
along
worse
those.
than
Yeah,
physical
way
abuse.
worse. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Um, there's a context in which we could agree, but there's a context in which we are advised that it's kind of thin ice or dangerous ground to say which form of abuse is
Is
worse.
worse, right?
Because in our profession, for example, with when we're dealing maybe with a domestic violence case between two adults, you would sometimes hear the victim, most times a female, say she would have preferred him to maybe hit her than say the things that he would have said. But to the person that is actually being abused or maybe spoken to in a harsh way, that could really be tough. But nevertheless, it is something we all can have a consciousness of in terms of all the different forms of abuse, so that because humanly speaking, all parents should see themselves as a work in progress, because indeed children will test test you, so to speak. So sometimes it's understandable in terms of how you feel in that moment, but it comes with over a period of time you see yourself as a work in progress as a parent, and you try to be intentional and try to have a consciousness that lashing out in any form could have severe impacts on the child. But the thing is, sometimes when you have those moments, is to afterwards have that reflection time, and you seek to learn from it, and consciously going forward to and it comes, and over time there comes parenting. It's a process, and you can grow as a parent. So sometimes you don't need to beat up on yourself too much when you make those slips and those errors, but just learn from it and keep going. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. I definitely appreciate having these conversations because I'm yet to have a child. And I've always said one of the reasons why I'm fearful of having a child is because I don't want to have to raise that child in a way where I would say I was raised. I kind of feel like I was raised in like a toxic household. And I always say that I don't want to bring a child and, raise a child in a way like that. So I really do appreciate having these conversations and your insights as well. Now, as it relates to boys specifically, what are some conversations you think we should be having with young boys in the household before allowing them to enter into the world? What are some of the conversations that we should be having with them, but conversations that society would consider taboo?
Well, definitely a number of it came out as we spoke here this afternoon. We definitely have to have conversations about boys being able to, just to summarize some of the things we touched on already, that for boys being able to, if they feel hurt, disappointed, bullied in any way, whatever the negative hurt they feel or they experience, that it's okay to say and name how they felt, either to the person that said it to them, even if it's a parent, or they can say it to someone else, in the process of seeking help from the situation. They must be able to talk about how they feel. They must know it's okay to express themselves in words, express themselves in tears, and we must be able to talk with them about, in terms of problem solving, that violence or physical retaliation is under no circumstances acceptable. There are other, and we share with them other options other than getting physical, because again, society tends to inculcate in them that it's okay to in terms of your masculinity and proving you're a man, that one of the ways you do that is in being physically aggressive and violent and retaliative, and that is how you assert your masculinity, assert yourself as a man. You get respect by getting physical. And so these are the conversations that we should be having with them. And also in terms of, we had mentioned it, in terms of not only girls can be victims of, let's say, sexual abuse, but boys too. And they too can learn about, things like good touch, bad touch, and understand that it's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about. If you feel in any way sexually violated, you're not the one to feel ashamed or feel bad, but you gotta have someone you can talk to, you feel safe with, and that you can get help so that it does not continue and to the detriment of the child. But the bottom line is they must be able to express themselves. They must understand that violence is not the solution, and they must also understand that respect is something that should be a two-way street, mutual, and so they respect females, and so that they will not come to a place where they think it's acceptable to be abusive to a female and become perpetrators of gender-based violence, violence based on gender, or more so violence in any form. But teach them also respect and responsibility, and let them know in terms of gender stereotypes and gender roles. For example, we must have the conversation with them that it's okay for a young man, a boy, to be at the sink assisting with wares sometimes. It's okay for him to assist as he grows with maybe the laundry, and that doesn't make him any less of a male. And in other words, teaching him having a conversation also about shared responsibility at home and things like that.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that,
I
Vanessa?
just want to say to parents, there's no perfect parent. You know, don't beat up yourself if some days it's you know, you need to take a break, you lash out sometimes, you know. But always remember that there's no perfect parent, and just give your boy child a hug. A lot of them need it. Even though no matter how big they be, and they'll be like, oh, I don't want, give them a hug. Tell them you love them, you know, because those little things, as much as they might say that, oh, they don't want it, mom, don't hug me, don't tell me that, they need it. If you can hug them so many times, as much as you see them, you hug them, you tell them you love them. If one day that you need a break and you need a restart, you go back and you make sure that you know, tell your kids that you love them, you're sorry, you know, you're just having a bad day. Be interactive with them. Express yourself with them. When they see that you can express yourself with them, they be open up to express themselves with you, because they say, okay, my parent or my mom, my dad is so comfortable to sit and share this with me. I know that they can be my comfort too. So, you know, just take it one day at a time.
Any final words before we go, Diego, to the parents who are watching and are learning and are taking notes on how to move forward with their boy child? Do you have any final message?
Well, I would just want to summarize everything that we said in a capsule to say, let's be there for our boys. Let's show them that love, as Vanessa was talking about, those hugs, and you know, let them know it's okay to express yourself, express how you feel. It's okay to express yourself in terms of tears if necessary, and it doesn't make you any less of a boy or a man to talk to someone, to seek professional counseling. Sometimes, even as parents, it's okay to seek guidance and help concerning our parenting style, and be open and humble enough and stay teachable, because all parents are a work in progress. You may make mistakes along the way, but the key is to just learn as you go along. And as you do that, one day your boy or boys, your children will be very grateful to you that you show them that love and that you are not abusive to them, and they know that they have a safe space, and you're very approachable and teachable, and they will one day be very grateful that you were there for them.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for sharing your insights with us, and of course, thank you for our viewer. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in to this program. As we continue to celebrate Blue Umbrella Day this April, this discussion was a reminder that we need to be intentional when it comes to supporting our boys and creating safe spaces for our children, especially boys, for them to open up, have discussions, and also it is important for us to have more conversations surrounding boys. My name is Daniela Arajo, Communications Officer at Child Link Inc. It was a pleasure having this program. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time.